Hi, and welcome to episode 74 of LTFM. Today I'm hanging out with Aaron again.
Hello.
Hello. So, wanted to do an episode with you to talk about Formula One because
Okay.
honestly, when you first started talking to me about it, I was like, okay, it's like a NASCAR thing, right?
Right.
Fucking boring. I don't care about cars going around in a circle. And, because I was just like, okay, it's boring.
Yeah. It's so much
Cool.
more than that, though.
Yeah, and then it was just like little by little, as I was like, okay, I'll watch a race with you. I was like, easy peasy. Okay, there's like what? How many cars do they usually have in like the
20.
20? Okay. And I was like, okay, whatever. Right? Anyone can get in there. And then you started telling me more things about it, and I was like, holy fuck, this is different.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I could totally do that. Right? And then finding out, I was like, wait, they don't have power steering? That right there lost me. I
Yeah.
was like, what do you mean?
No power steering, no anti-lock brakes, no traction control,
Yeah.
no hydro-assisted brakes. It's all manpower.
Yeah, and that was crazy to me because it's like, how in the fuck? Because like I feel like everyone's kind of been in a situation before where it's like, hey, I need you to steer this car while I push it because like the power steering went out.
So, yeah, but it's different when you're moving.
Yeah, but also that shit is the hardest thing to pull.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, I could do it. I'm getting yelled at in the car and everything. Like,
Yeah.
it's the hardest thing to
That's
do.
also it's slightly different because a manual rack like they use and a hydraulic rack like 99% of cars have, it's a little different because you're fighting the hydraulic system when the hydraulic system isn't working, but also you're almost always doing that at low speed. Once you start moving, it's not bad.
So, okay, so you've been in a car that had no power steering, right?
Yeah.
It's easier than that to move
Easier than what?
than a car with no power steering. So, like, if you just got in my car right now and I was like,
Yeah.
steer it while I just give it a push, right, to
It's
get it
hard.
in the driveway,
Yeah.
it's hard. Is it that hard or harder while they're driving?
No, it's easier.
It's easier?
Yeah. It gets way easier once you're moving because the wheels kind of help. Once you start turning, the wheels kind of want to follow the curve that you're giving them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then I could totally do Formula One. Okay, but like, and then you after you had told me that because I was like making a big fuss out of it, and then I was like, uh, how do they do that or whatever? You're like, that's why they have to train so much, right?
Yeah,
Like they have to work out, they
yeah,
have to do like these exercises. You're like, you had showed me one where like someone was like pulling so
with
hard
their
on
neck.
someone's head. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
was like, oh my god, what are they
yeah, they
doing?
have to train their necks or their heads will fall off.
Pop right off. That's crazy.
Because you also have to take into account the weight of the helmet too. There's the weight of the helmet. There's the G force of them entering a turn.
Hmm.
It all adds up.
Let's see.
And then with braking too, they have to strengthen their legs because they don't have hydraulic brakes. So when they're braking, they're like pretty heftily stomping on their brake pedal.
They can get up to 6 and 6.5 G's.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yanking your head to the side while you're wearing a helmet.
Because when I'm on a roller coaster and that shit's throwing me around, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, and you wear like the motorcycle helmet. Imagine going on a roller coaster with the motorcycle helmet on. And an average roller coaster, you're probably getting maybe 2 G's.
2, 3,
Yeah.
maybe 4. The Hulk, I think, is like 3, 4. And I love that.
Imagine going on it with that motorcycle helmet
I'm dead because that shit is crazy. When we're riding on the bike and Aaron does like this crazy stuff where he's holding the handles and then he like dips down and puts his head really low, but he's still like driving forward, and then all the air hits me.
on. I let her catch all the air. Yeah.
It feels like my head's gonna pop right off. I'm like, oh shit! It's so scary. I just like I cannot. Um. Also, you had showed me a video the other day of the halo thing in front of the
Yeah.
car,
Yeah.
like I guess like to show the test that they do on
Yep.
it to see if it's strong enough to like withstand like a tire and shit being
Yep.
thrown at it. Also, like another car,
Yeah.
because I didn't think about things like that. I was just like, oh, like if I spin out and I end up on the track or something, someone crashes into me. I kind of figured that it was gonna just be, like they'll just crash into me. I'm not thinking about how fast they're going, that
Yeah.
they could like flip up onto someone
Yep.
and
Yep.
they're decaffeinated at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Because the cars didn't used to have the halo.
That's crazy. Was anyone decaffeinated before?
Um.
Let's
Yes.
see.
Um. A long time ago, like before the cars they were like those like barrel tube shape with like the wheels on the outside. Um. Can't think of his name now. But he got into an accident and
Hamlet Koenig.
that wasn't him.
Hamlet on October 6, 1974, an Australian race car driver died.
But that's not Formula One. Or is it?
Yeah.
It's pretty rare
Yeah.
because keep in mind they're the best drivers in the world. Like those 20 drivers on the Formula One grid are the absolute best drivers in the world. Give or take a few for sponsorship reasons, but they're still
Just too
in
many things
that
to
seat
read.
because they're one of the best in the world.
Uh-huh.
Um, so having some sort of accident like that is extremely rare to start with. Um, but then also the safety of the cars. Um, they hit a wall at 150 miles an hour and a piece of the car breaks off and the driver just gets up and walks away.
Yeah.
They're insanely safe. Even before the Halo was introduced, there were instances where a car might have flipped over or a car brazed over the top of another car, something, and the driver was unharmed. But after the Halo, there's been a couple accidents that really show that the Halo was a fantastic thing. A couple that I can think of, Max Verstappen ended up on top of Lewis Hamilton's car.
No way.
Um, I don't remember what race it was, but it was maybe 2 seasons ago or maybe last. Nah, it was like 3 seasons ago, I think. But they came together going into a turn, and Max's car kind of kicked up a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and Lewis's car kind of just slid under it. And Max's wheel was like right there, hit the halo. Lewis was fine. And I just, like if the
That's
halo wasn't
scary.
there,
Yeah,
that wheel's coming down on Lewis's head. He's probably dead.
definitely.
Probably doesn't survive that. And then there was another one a couple years ago. Yuki Tsunoda went off into one of the runoff areas where there's grass and was kind of sliding, and his car kind of like bit into the ground and flipped.
No way.
And he like flipped 2 or 3 times and then flipped up over the wall into the fence and was actually between like the fence and the wall sideways.
What?
And like if he didn't have a halo on his car, he was
Fucked.
yeah.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah. And that's
Like,
just a couple. There's been other ones.
yeah.
Like the Romain Grosjean crash where he went through the barrier and his car split in half.
Oh my god, it was like
Yeah.
on fire.
Yep.
And then he got out.
If you've never seen that, go to YouTube. Type in Romain Grosjean crash. That's a heroic. And then he went on to be a successful IndyCar driver after that. I have the coolest photo ever of him. He won an IndyCar race, and there was a photo of him holding the IndyCar trophy with his burnt ass hand
Oh wow.
from that accident. It's the coolest photo in the history of racing, maybe.
Yeah.
Because his hands were all
That's
burnt.
a nasty burn.
His hands were all burnt up, but the rest excuse me, the rest of them was pretty much fine.
Mm-hmm.
He went through a guardrail. Like there's like one of those like on the side of the highway, those like metal guardrails. There was like a stack of like three of them on the side of the track, like way off in the runoff area. Like his car just got loose and he lost
Yeah, because it's
control.
like there's the grass
He
too.
went skidding off at 150 miles an hour, or however fast they were going. There was no stopping it, and he hit that barrier, and the barrier kind of split, and the front half of his car and him went through the barrier, and the back half of his car stayed on the track side of the barrier. And in Formula One cars, the fuel tank is like it's like a bladder that's made out of like Kevlar and rubber and stuff that actually kind of like the drivers are almost sitting in it. It's kind of like wrapped behind and around the driver.
Mm-hmm.
So when the car split like that, the fuel bladder ruptured, and there was just a massive fire. And I watched it live, and I remember sitting there. I'm like, I just watched Romain Grosjean die.
Yeah.
I just watched that.
Because like, what else are you
Everybody on the
expecting?
pit wall, every single mechanic in the pits, every single team boss is just standing there in awe. There's no emotion on their face, with their mouths open, hands on their heads, watching the monitor, hoping they see Romain.
Because it's just on fire.
Yeah, it's just on fire.
And
You
it's
can't see
split.
anything. You could see the back half of his car and a giant fire. That's all you could see.
Yeah.
And there's a medical car that follows the field
Mm-hmm.
after like they're coming out of a caution, and like during the caution, before they come out of the caution, because it was like during a safety car, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But the medical car got there almost right away, but like the fire was like too bad, like it was too hot for them to like actually go in and try to like grab them out of the car and like get
Yeah.
them out and
Because
stuff.
didn't they start doing like the fire
Yeah,
extinguishers? And
there
shit?
was like 4 or 5 guys with like fire extinguishers trying to like get to the car, and all of a sudden you just see this like figure getting up on and over the barrier, and the medical guy, I don't remember his name, I'm sorry, but the Formula One medical guy ran like into the fire because he saw Roman getting up and climbing over that barrier to get out of the fire.
Yeah.
Went like ran up, and you could tell how hot the fire was because this guy got like 10-15 feet from Romain, and he was like cowering, like he was scared to get close enough to try to help him
Yeah.
because the fire was so hot.
Yeah, and it was like it wasn't even like he crashed, it caught on fire, and he immediately jumped out. It was like a second.
Yeah, it was
Because
like,
you showed me the video, and it was like
yeah,
that dude's dead.
it was a little bit of time. Yeah, it was.
He's fucking dead. Like, and then it's such a small area inside of there
Yeah.
that it's like the panic, because like when they're sitting in those cars, it's just like enough room for them to just like slide in,
pretty much, yeah.
and it's like hugging them, and they just have like enough room to like move their head just a little bit.
They're also not sitting. They're almost laying on their back. Yeah.
Because it's so like
they're not easy to get in and out of. But
small.
It was long enough that had he not had like the fire retardant racing suit on,
he would have been
cooked. Yeah. Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Like, honestly.
Yeah. But that was one of the craziest things I've ever seen live, for sure.
Yeah. It was scary for me, like, just because what did we just watch? The very first race, right? The other night that happened?
Australia 2025.
Yeah. It was scary for me to just see people like spinning out a little bit, because it's like, oh fuck, like it's scary because before I knew anything, I was like, okay, they're driving the top speed, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, they're probably going 120, right? Yeah. Oh shit, they're zooming. And then when we started watching it, I was like,
they're going they're going 120 through a lot of the corners.
Yeah. And it was like, that's slow. They're following the safety car at like 200 at times, almost like it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, the safety car is there's an Aston Martin, like a souped up Aston Martin, or like a Mercedes AMG. I think it's only the Aston Martin now.
Yeah. The one that was for the Australia one that we just watched, that was an Aston Martin. It was an Aston, yeah. And that shit was whipping.
And the Burt Mylander, the safety car driver, he's going balls out. Like, it's like a race for him. Like he's driving that car to its fullest potential.
Yeah, because these
And
cars are just like,
and then here's all the Formula One cars behind him. It's like walking behind somebody that's walking too slow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because like when you're watching it, it really doesn't look like they're driving that fast. And also like certain camera angles when they're coming around, because like they're
Yeah.
not just driving straight the whole time. Like when they get to certain areas, like they'll do like a little like zigzag kind of
Yep.
thing,
Yep.
and other times like they'll just kind of go and like turn real quick. And it's like when they do little zigzags and stuff, it looks like you're watching a race, but you're like putting it in like fast forward or something.
Yeah.
Like it just looks
Yeah,
weird.
the change of direction is crazy. Well, once they're going at that speed, the aerodynamics of the car is so strong that they can just jerk the wheel and the car turns
Yeah.
because there's that much downforce being applied to the tires.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Also, the fact I was just like, okay, whatever then, right? They're driving fast. They must be good because there's only 20 that are allowed in this. Um and I was like, whatever, anyone can get into it, but you told me that it's not just like you could just start racing today and eventually in
Yeah.
5 years you could get there. It's like this is what they've been training to
All of those
do.
people have been training to do that since they were like 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
was like, that's nuts
Yeah.
because it's like that means you have money to be doing shit like
Yes and
that.
no. Yeah.
Right? For okay, for like a majority of them.
Typically, a Formula One driver is going to be pretty well off to start with. It's just how it comes
Yeah.
out.
Like
A lot of them are.
what's his nuts? Verstappen.
Yeah. Well, his dad was a Formula One driver also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like he's got money to be
Yeah.
doing that. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because yeah, of course everyone just wants to race and do things like that, but it's like you have to be able to get there.
Yeah. There aren't a lot of, you know, it's not like a football or basketball scholarship and then you make it into the like NFL or NBA.
Yeah.
It's not just pure skill. You have to have the funds available to do kart racing when you're little, to get into some kind of car racing in your early mid teens, to get the attention of some of those Formula One teams to get in their junior program or into their, you know, into like a Formula 3 or a Formula 2 seat or something. It's not just, wow, that kid's good. I'm a Division 1 college. I want that kid to play for me. And then they get on this national stage, and then NFL teams are like, "Oh, I want to draft that guy. He's really good." It's not quite like that.
Yeah.
There's not really any of the drivers that has happened to. I would say maybe Lewis Hamilton is the closest. With the situation that him and his dad were in. I mean, his dad
Yeah.
absolutely busted his ass for him to be able to do all the kart racing that he did.
Yeah. Because
Um,
you want to explain that?
yeah. Well, I don't know the
Well,
full story,
because I was
but
just like, oh, Hamilton, like
yeah,
my old guinea pig.
yeah,
Ham. I was like, oh, I love Hamilton, right? And then you're like, story behind him, and then you told me about
yeah.
like his
His
dad wasn't a Formula One racer.
no, his
You
dad
know,
is just a dude.
a very sweet man. We'll get into that.
Yeah, his mom left, and his dad just absolutely busted his ass to get enough funds together so that Lewis could kart race when he was little, um, including, you know, figuring out how to make the cart faster. His dad was the mechanic that worked on the cart. Like they didn't have the money to be on a team, to hire a team, to hire a mechanic, to buy the really good parts some of the other teams were buying. It was his dad making the best possible cart he could make, and Lewis just using his talent to be the best, kind of. And that's really the closest it gets to that kind of like Cinderella type story. Obviously, once Lewis got into, um, I don't know if it was McLaren or Mercedes, because the first team he drove for was McLaren Mercedes, but I don't know if there was some sort of other junior driver program or something that he was in.
Yeah.
But
do you know if he started in one of like the other formula numbers?
That's what I was saying.
Right?
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay.
No. But once he was in Formula One, he was successful from the start.
Yeah.
Basically,
like he was doing great.
Yeah, he was runner up in the championship his first season, if I remember correctly. I mean, he was successful from the start. and
Yeah.
it was just the raw talent that teams were able to recognize because his dad busted his ass so much to
Yeah.
get him in those carts and stuff. And it's like and then like the other end of the spectrum would be like a Lance Stroll, who is a great driver. He might not be one of the 20 best drivers in the world. He might be one of the 30 best drivers in the world. But his dad is absolutely massively rich.
Hmm.
So he was able to do anything he needed to get the attention.
Yeah.
The talent's there, obviously, but it's not a talent of like a Max Verstappen or a Lewis Hamilton or a Charles Leclerc. But the talent was there enough that the money makes up the difference between him being that top five talent, because in the situation Lance Stroll was in, he was driving for kind of a midfield team, and his dad ended up buying the team.
Oh shit! Because he had money.
And then that team ended up becoming the Aston Martin team, the green cars.
Hmm.
So obviously, Lance Stroll, as long as his dad owns that team,
Yeah.
is going to have a driving spot.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
What about Verstappen? Like his
he's just
dad,
good. Yeah, he's just good.
because his dad was like always getting him into that
Yeah,
because
well,
he knew
his
about it,
dad was a driver. Yeah.
and he was really really good.
Well, Jos Verstappen wasn't that great. He was
What's his
good.
name?
Yes,
Yas.
yes,
Yeah.
JOS. Yes, he was.
Yas.
He was your average Formula One.
Okay.
He wasn't like, he didn't win like 5 world championships or something crazy,
Mhm.
but
Also, when we had first watched some of the things, because I was like, "Oh, you had told me about a couple races, and I didn't watch them with you." And then I was like, "Who won?" You're like, "Verstappen."
yeah,
And I was like, "Okay, well, who won this
it's been
one?"
pretty boring the
And
last
you're
few
like,
years.
"Verstappen." And I was like, "Okay."
And
And
and that was just Red Bull just clearing away had the best car.
yeah, and it was just crazy,
Yeah,
right? And then it was funny to me because after that, I had like eventually started watching a couple of them with you, and I was like, this man's complaining. Anytime that he was not in the first spot,
yeah.
he was
He turn
literally,
he turns into the biggest baby.
yeah,
Something's wrong with the car. Something's wrong with the tires.
immediately. Like as soon as somebody just
Always.
got in front of him,
Yep.
and it was like, what do you mean? Your car was just
Always.
driving totally fine, and
Yep.
now you're gonna be like, something's wrong with
He's
it.
just the biggest spoiled baby.
Yeah. And it
Um.
was funny because like he was like he would not stop bitching
Yeah.
until he got into first.
The last few years, Red Bull also cheated. I don't
Yeah,
know.
you were telling me about
Yeah.
that because you were
So
saying something. Go ahead.
next year, 2026, there's a new regulation that's starting.
A new one.
So the cars will be different. The engines are different. It's basically everything next year is basically a toss up. The worst cars on the grid this year could be the best cars next year. No one knows. Completely new regulations. But anyways, so last year and this year were supposed to be stale years, as in you cannot make like major changes to the engine, the car, anything like that, because they wanted the slower teams to be able to close the gap to the higher teams,
Mm-hmm.
the faster teams. Which, as you saw, there's a lot of cars, different manufacturers, all teams, all kind of together. So, um, but what happened was Red Bull came. It was 2 or 3 seasons ago. Red Bull came out and just like their engine was making more power. The car was just like aerodynamically better than everybody else's car.
Cheating.
And then they found out that they spent like an extra $125 million on like research and development or something for that season,
Yeah.
over the cap that no team is supposed to go over. And they gave them like a slap on the wrist fine for like a couple $1 million or something like that,
Not fair.
instead of invalidating the car, because no one else went over the cap, because it's a hard cap. You're not supposed to be able to go over it. But they spent all that extra money developing this car because over the last 2 or 3 however long it was, it's been the absolute best car. Now other teams are catching up,
Mm-hmm.
like McLaren, Mercedes is right there this year, Ferrari's right there this year. But that's why he was so dominant the last 2, 3 seasons, was because Red Bull
because they put
basically,
another $1 billion into
yeah,
the
Red Bull
car,
basically put a bunch of extra money into research and
which
development for their car,
everybody else could have been
which
way
they
better
weren't
too.
supposed to be able to do, which also set them up for the next 2-3 seasons because the teams aren't allowed to change their car that much.
Yeah, but they're already there.
Yeah.
They're already there. Also, I feel like the reason why they just gave him like that slap on the wrist, they paid hella money,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
his
They
daddy was in
also,
there before.
I think Formula One was at a time where, so like four, or 3 or 4 seasons ago, there was a set of new regulations. It was like a soft regulation change, where the aerodynamics was changed to be more like underneath the car kind of thing, like with the underbody, for like the suction down onto the track rather than like all the crazy aero on top of the car to push it down. But basically, up until then, it was Mercedes 1-2 for like 7 years.
Yeah.
Every race, it was Lewis and Valtteri pretty much on the podium at every single race, unless their car broke.
Yeah.
Um, and I think Formula One was scared that it was getting boring, so they like initiated that regulation change, and then that whole thing with Red Bull happened when that regulation change happened, and
Did any of the other drivers say anything about that? Or were they,
no,
you think they weren't like
they all are
allowed?
very political. They all keep very quiet
Hmm.
when stuff like that goes down. They don't want to say the wrong thing. There's a lot of, I'm gonna put this. There's a lot of like behind closed doors meetings and talkings in Formula One
Where people are getting
between
money
between the
bags.
teams, the FIA. Not necessarily like paying people off or anything, but there's
But
a
like,
lot
I'll
of
kill
like,
you if you say
no,
something.
not like that,
Okay.
but like talks, like buddying people up, or just like,
Here's a bag of
how
drugs.
about, look, how about we let this one slide, kind of thing,
How
or
about
like,
you give me $1 million then?
last year, McLaren had this genius design with the rear wing where at a certain speed the rear wing would kind of start flexing,
Mm-hmm.
which would open up the DRS slot a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So there was less drag on straights, which means they could go faster on straights.
Was that legal?
Technically, yes. This year, it's not,
Why?
because Red Bull complained that they were running an illegal
Oh,
car.
Red
Yep.
Bull?
Yep.
The ones that put in that
As
extra $1 billion?
as soon as somebody has something sketchy going on with their car, Red Bull will complain about it.
Okay, so hold on. Everyone else is allowed to have these
For
back. Everyone else is allowed to have these little meetings with like, hey, how about we let this one slide? But then I have something on my car that's like, oh, cool, I'm going a little bit faster, and then you're gonna complain about it.
So, like 3-4 seasons ago, I don't remember which
I'm
year it
annoyed.
was. Mercedes had this thing that they called dual axis steering, and it was this thing where on the straights they would pull their steering wheel out a little bit, and it would change the axis of the tires so that they could have better.
Who had that?
Mercedes.
Okay.
So that they had better straight line speed. Well, Red Bull, and I think Ferrari complained about it too. But the basic ruling was that there was nothing in the rule book that they couldn't do that. So by the end of that season, there were other teams that were implementing some version of that.
Yeah.
But then next year it was outlawed.
Okay, so question.
Yeah.
When does the season start?
Australia.
No,
Well,
like it usually starts in
year by year.
In March.
I don't know when the official season started, but
Okay.
year by year.
Year by year. Okay.
Yeah.
So
the first race is usually in March.
Okay. So let's just say it's the first race, right? It's right before it. We've built our car just like this. Once they build their car like that, they're done for the year. They're not allowed to.
No.
They're able to change it throughout the year, throughout the races?
Once you have
Or is it just once they get to that cap?
So once you have it's hard to explain because they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars going in the wind tunnel, running diagnostics on a computer, running aerodynamic properties on a computer, running, oh, if we add this little 1 inch piece of carbon fiber to the end of the wing, that might upset the wing if we're entering a corner at a certain speed. Like, they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars developing these cars. Once you kind of put a car together, you have to find ways to improve that car. You can't get halfway through the season and go, this is a wash. We need to put a new car out there.
And do they do that? Because most teams have two cars.
All teams have two cars.
All teams do.
Yes.
Okay.
So what they do usually after the first few races, there's a little break, and some of the teams might show up to the next race with a slightly redesigned front wing, slightly redesigned rear wing. A cooling duct might be slightly different than it was before, or something like that. But for the most part, the car itself, the floor, is pretty much going to be the same thing.
So they're allowed to just do like little tweaks on it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's more of like a tweak throughout the season, just because they've already spent so much time and money to develop that specific car. Like Aston Martin, for example, this year, they didn't spend a ton of money improving their car from last year to this year because they're spending a lot of money getting ready for the new regulations next year. They're
they already
all the extra time with their employees and stuff doing all the research. They said focus on next year. So like it's a thing. I mean, these teams are massive. Like McLaren, for example. McLaren is not a car company.
What?
McLaren is a racing company who happens to make some cars.
Is that why those cars are like hella fast?
Yeah. But McLaren exists as a company specifically to race cars.
Okay.
They're not like Ford, who makes cars and then they have like some race cars.
Yeah.
They exist specifically to race. Red Bull is kind of the same way. I mean, it's an energy drink company, but the Red Bull racing team as it exists specifically as a race team. They don't do anything else. They have a massive facility with thousands of employees just making 2 cars. If you think about that for a second.
Yeah. That's
You
kind
know,
of
like
nuts.
if you think about, like the Ford plant over there in Shit Town.
Yeah.
Maybe 2,000-3,000 employees work there, and they probably turn out like 200-300 cars a day, kind of thing. Some of these Formula One facilities, they probably have 5,000-6,000 people working there just to make 2 cars over the winter.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
So.
And that's not even talking about the engine. That's
a different team?
Oh my God. That's a completely other conversation. That's just developing the car.
Holy fuck. Okay.
And then like, there's only a few engine manufacturers. Red Bull bought Honda's engine facility, so they use that. And then like, there's the Mercedes engine facility. And then the Ferrari engine facility.
Do any of those?
Actually, I think that's it now.
Do any of those places make the engines for the other cars as well?
Yes.
Like multiple ones? Okay.
Yes. Which is a disadvantage.
Yeah.
A little bit. Because, like, take, for example, Mercedes makes their own engine. They know exactly the diameters of the engine. They can communicate between factories. Say, hey, I need that valve cover on the engine to slope down a little bit more so we can get the body work a little tighter around the car because that's going to improve the aerodynamics. McLaren, who uses Mercedes engines, gets some Mercedes engines in a crate, and they got to figure out how to make their car around that engine.
Because they're not with that company.
Because they're not making the engines.
Wow.
it's the same
Yeah,
engine,
it's the same, but also it's
but
like
it's not the
you're
same.
getting it,
Yeah,
and now you got to figure that out.
yeah,
But for this one, we could say like we want this little thing tweaked, and they're just like we got you, and
yep.
then they're gonna do all these special tests and do extra things. That's why in these races, I feel like the same cars and stuff are pretty much like all like in the same spots
Yeah.
around there. And then there's like those ones where it's like those cars are always like fucking
When
16,
there's
17, 20.
when there's a regulation change, there's going to be one, two, maybe three. The goal is to have all the cars within like a tenth of a second of themselves when they're doing qualifying.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost never going to happen because Mercedes might say, "Oh, the floor and the front wing need to be designed this way." Ferrari will say it's a different way. Red Bull will say it's a different way. McLaren will say it's a different way. They're all going to be separated by their own ideologies of how to make the best car. But typically, when new regulations come, there's a top team or two top teams, or maybe three close, kind of close together. Like, and the tracks are different too. There's tracks that are really wide open with high speed turns, like Monza, and then there's tracks like Monaco where it's a lot of turning with like low speed turning and stuff like that. So and then there's tracks with both aspects. And certain cars are going to do better in certain tracks, and certain cars are going to do better in other tracks. Um, so usually there's like two, three teams, which is 6 cars of the 20 car field. So it's about a third of
Mm-hmm.
the field is going to be out in front of everybody else. And then there's the quote best of the rest middle
Yeah.
field, which a lot of those midfield teams now do not have the funding of midfield teams because
Yeah.
of the way
Is
all the
that because of like the sponsors and stuff
well, a
like
lot of the
that?
financial regulations have changed,
Mm-hmm.
implementing a cost cap, and then like they did like a reverse pecking order for like wind tunnel development and stuff. So like the first place team from the previous season gets the least amount of aerodynamic wind tunnel time, and then the last place team gets the most time, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing,
So they're
to
just trying to
to try
like
to even out the field a little bit.
yeah.
But like for example, like the old Force India team, which is now Aston Martin, has a lot more money and resources than they used to have. So it's pretty much expected next year they should be one of the better teams,
Mm-hmm.
having not been a very good team for the last 10 years or however long.
Yeah.
Williams fired their, I don't remember what her name was or what her position title was, but they fired her, hired a bunch of new people, got some new sponsors and stuff. Haven't been successful in a long time. Are probably going to be successful next year. They already are mildly successful this year compared to how they've been. I mean, there was 4 or 5 seasons ago. I think I could have driven my mom's Impala around the track faster than those Williams cars were.
That's sad.
Like they were so far behind they were in danger of not qualifying for the race because there's like a stipulation that you have to be a certain percentage within the leader,
Yeah.
and they were like at a couple of the tracks in danger of not meeting that percentage, and then they wouldn't have even gotten to race.
Yeah. Because at
But
that point, you're kind of like in the way of the person that's in the front.
yeah, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
But now they're right up in the midfield running up onto the leaders somehow. And then like the Racing Bulls team, which was Alpha Tauri before, and then before that I don't remember what it was called, but um, they've upped the game. A lot of the midfield teams are not really, like there's like Haas and Haas, Kick Sauber are like not all that great. But then also next year, completely new team stepping in.
Yeah.
Cadillac stepping in with 2 cars.
Next year?
Next year.
Wow. Why?
Ford is partnering with Red Bull to make Red Bull's engines. So, along with a regulation change, there's going to be 2 extra cars, a whole new team. It's going to be
Wow.
next year's going to be flip a coin and guess who might be the best car.
Yeah, that's really
Regulation
interesting.
changes are exciting.
Because right now, Red Bull is just making their own engines, right?
Well, yes and no. I think legally, Red Bull, quote, bought Honda's engine factory, end quote.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was just, I think that was so they could get around the rule and develop their engine further before that season started. That was that whole thing I was talking about before.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
Because Red Bull went from having the worst engine with Honda. Like, Honda's engines were so bad, McLaren dropped Honda's engines.
uh,
Um, and then Red Bull comes back the next season after Honda left and, quote, Red Bull bought Honda's engine facilities. And suddenly Red Bull has the best engine. When they weren't supposed to be improving their engine.
suspicious.
But because it was a, quote, new team, it was a new manufacturer,
Okay.
they were able to update. There's a lot of quotations. Nobody can see me.
There's
but
a lot.
I'm doing
He's
quotations.
been doing it like
yeah.
for the last 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so also with this, I was like, in my mind, I was like, cool. So they do these practice races, whatever, and then they also do like the actual race, right? And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, they could just change their tires whenever they need to, right?
Yeah.
Cool. And then you had told me that they're only allowed to have a certain number of tires for the season, right?
No, per race.
Per race.
Yeah.
But
so like when they show up for the race weekend, they get a certain amount of tires.
To practice
that's
and
all
to
they
race
get for the
with.
race weekend. To do 3 practices, a qualifying, and a race.
That's scary. That's scary to be like, okay, I'm going to practice in these, right?
Yeah.
But then what if the conditions out there
Yeah,
are something different?
So Pirelli decides which tires the teams are allowed to pick from. There's 5 different compounds. They go C1 through C5, C5 being the hardest. Okay. And they'll say, for this race, we're going to use C2 as the soft tire, C3 as the medium, C4 as the hard tire.
And do they do that because of the area that they're going to be in?
Typically, the track surface, what they think the like surface temperature of the track is going to be, and then like what the air temp is, has a lot to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But because like when they race somewhere harder, or not harder, hotter, like Bahrain, for example, they'll use like the C3, C4, C5.
Because they can handle higher temperatures?
Yes.
Okay.
Because the softer tires are not going to last as long.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, typically in the hotter places, you'll see a driver go out and be very careful on their outlap for qualifying on soft tires and then absolutely lay it down on the soft tires. That set of tires cooked for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah.
Would not be able to use them again. Like, in those hotter places, those soft tires last, like, you get, like, maybe 1 lap of top tier performance, maybe 2-3 laps of reasonable performance, and then they start falling off.
Do the softer tires have more of a grip on them?
Yes.
Okay, and then
They
the
grab
harder
the track
tires,
better.
the harder tires are like those slick ones that just look shiny.
They're all slick.
They all look shiny
They're
like
all
that?
slick, yeah. Unless you're putting intermediates or wets on, they're all slick.
Oh.
But it's how hard the compound of the tire is that affects the way it grips to the track.
Yeah. Okay.
Along with tire temperature, track temperature. There's lots of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Pirelli makes that decision, and then teams go, I want 4 sets of softs, 4 sets of mediums, and 2 sets of hards, or however they figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they get for the weekend. So if they use a bunch of sets in practice or in qualifying, they have less available to them during the race.
Yeah.
And during the race, it is mandatory that you make at least 1 pit stop and change tires.
Mm-hmm. Has there ever been any races where someone went almost like the whole race? Because it's 57 laps, right?
Well, each track is different.
Oh, okay. It just depends.
On the there has been. A couple years ago, the Mercedes were really good at preserving their tires. Well, Lewis Hamilton is kind of the tire whisperer. He can get tires into a working zone and keep them there.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple times where the Mercedes cars went probably 90% of the race on the same set of tires.
That's nuts.
And then went on to like, or started on a soft and went like 8 to 10 laps or whatever, and then switched to like a hard and went the rest of the race kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
or put softs on at the end. Um, it's not super common. A lot of times now, recently, I want to say maybe 2, 3 years ago, Pirelli kind of got with Formula One and they were like, how can we make things more exciting? You know? So the tires degrade faster now. You have to, the tires have a very specific operating
Like
temperature.
on purpose.
Yes.
Okay.
They have a very specific operating temperature where they're going to work really well. If you don't get them into that and you don't take care of them, they start graining really bad. They don't last as long as they used to. Most races now are two stops.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's like a medium hard or a medium soft for like 4 laps if you're like trying to run somebody down or something.
Yeah.
It depends. Like they have people on the pit wall, people in the garage figuring all this stuff out with computers and thinking about what the other teams are going to be doing, and
That's
it's a
nuts.
huge decision. Even just you know, even though everybody else is pitting, you're not going to lose anything by pitting.
Mm-hmm.
It's this huge thing. Do I come in before the other cars pit? Because once I get on those snooze tires, I might be way faster than everybody and pick up some time that way.
Yeah.
Do I wait until after they pit because they're going to come out and they're going to have to warm those tires up and they're not going to be as fast? And when I put my tires on, I'll be able to get them up to operating temperature because my car does that better, and I'll actually gain time by pitting after them.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot of.
Yeah, it's a lot going on
It's
where I
not.
was just like, oh, they get in there and then they're like, hey, change
Yeah,
your tires,
it's not
right?
a bunch of
I thought,
rednecks driving in a circle.
yeah,
There's a
I
lot of
really thought
yeah,
it was just like, oh, okay, we're racing, right? Because we
yeah.
are on a track. We're going on a track. It's just gonna be quick, and they're gonna tell me when I need to change my tires, this and that, whatever. And I didn't think it was like that much
There's
going
so much
on,
into it. Yeah,
and it makes it so interesting. Also, with like how fast it is in NASCAR, right? Because that's
yeah,
all that I seen
yeah.
before. They come in, they get their tires changed, do whatever. I was like, damn, that's fast. In Formula One, the speed at what they pull in and someone pops the car up, and before you can even blink, they're just like zooming off.
Yeah,
It's a second.
yeah,
And sometimes like
uh,
even with the race that we just watched,
yeah.
like uh what was it?
A, a Formula One pit stop is usually like
What is Lando on?
McLaren.
McLaren. Where like he pulled in, got his tires changed. A second later, like maybe a half second later, his partner pulled in,
Yep.
and then he got his tires changed, and they're fucking skirt. They're
Yep.
out of there,
Yep.
and it's so fast, it's nuts. And then like the speed that they pull off to get back into like going onto the track and everything is crazy fast. And there's so many people in that little pit stop thing.
There was a thing.
Someone get hit
a couple of years ago. Yeah,
Tell me.
One of the Ferrari mechanics had like his leg in front of one of the rear tires, and I don't remember who it was. It might have been Kimi Räikkönen. Went to go pull off after they put his car down, and that mechanic still had his leg there. Kimi can't see that. He can't see behind him. All he saw was that you're good to go because your car's on the ground with 4 tires.
Right, that guy moves
he
that thing away.
He starts taking off, and it shattered the guy's leg in like 2 places or something.
That would be me. I was looking at it today and I was like, man, because you're not thinking too much, and I would like take a step back, get ran over.
Yeah.
I'd be dead. That helmet doesn't it's not gonna protect your body.
Yeah. And the pickers essentially wear like minor fire suits and a helmet. That's the only protection they have.
And it's so crazy. I also had another question.
Sure.
Okay, so Lando Norris and what is it, Leclerc, whatever, is that the other guy that's on his team? Pastrami. Piastri. What is it? Something Oscar. Piastri. We just call him Pastrami. So they're on the same team. And in this first race that we just watched, uh Lando's first, Piastri's behind him, and a lot of the times, like, yeah, Lando was a little bit ahead of him, but like in a situation like that, because they're on the same team,
Mm-hmm.
are you
Allowed to race?
are you able to be like, I'm gonna take that first spot?
Depends.
And tell me about that. Like, cause
So this early in the season, it being the first race, they waited until the track was dry enough that it was safe for both cars to do that, but they said go ahead and race. Later in the season, if Lando is, 40, 50 points in the lead for the driver championship, they are absolutely going to tell Oscar, do not race him. Meaning, stay in second, try to keep everyone else behind you, kind of
and
thing.
do they tell him that before he goes out, or are they able to?
No, it would be a during race decision. It could
Will
also
they not air that on like the thing?
they will. They've kind of tried to crack down on team orders, but there's not really a lot that they can do about it. Because like one of the best duos was Lewis and Valtteri when they
Mm-hmm.
raced for Mercedes, and Lewis would be out in front, or they would both pit, or Lewis
Yeah.
would pit from out in front, and Valtteri would basically hold up everybody else while Lewis was pitting,
Mm-hmm.
and then Lewis would come out and stay in first, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or like would Valtteri would hold up the line of cars behind where Lewis is going to come out when he pits, kind of thing. But like, I think technically they tried to push back so that like teams aren't supposed to issue quote team orders like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But that's a kind of
but it
like
is
behind.
but it is the team's decision if your two drivers are going to race each other,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, the team doesn't get anything for a driver championship.
Mm.
That means nothing to the team. That's solely for the driver.
Yeah.
All the money comes from the constructors championship. So you need both cars to finish the race in a good position. So
Okay.
if they're racing each other and crash,
Yeah.
you're boned for that race.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just wondering because I had seen it and I was like, at certain times, I was like, he could have just like went around him and did
Yeah.
something, but like I
So
didn't know.
there's it depends. So like the race that's happening this weekend, which starts at 2 a.m., so we're gonna be watching it tomorrow morning sometime.
Mm-hmm.
Piastri qualified pole. They may give him the
Piastri qualified
he
pole
qualified pole
because
first. That's where he qualified.
he was in first place. I thought that was Lando.
No.
Lando wasn't in first.
Lando finished first in the last race.
What the fuck does pole mean?
He qualified first. Qualifying was last night.
What we watched?
No, that was the sprint race.
Oh wait, yeah, there was another thing on
Yeah.
last night.
So that was the sprint race, and then qualifying was like a few hours after that.
Oh, okay.
Oscar Piastri qualified pole.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think Lando qualified third.
Mm-hmm.
So they might say, okay, Oscar, you're the car out in front. They might tell Lando not to pass him.
Mm-hmm. But that's
Because
like behind.
because it's early in the season, they may still let him race,
Mm-hmm.
but only if it's safe to do so.
Yeah.
They're not going to let him race while Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton is breathing down their neck.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to say, keep it clean, don't race each other, clear yourselves from the rest of the field, then think about racing each other, kind of thing. Because maximizing points as a team is more important than we're going to try to push Lando to a driver championship.
But that would be something that they would kind of talk about, like, oh, we're in a meeting.
Oh, they'll talk about it before the.
Yeah, that would be like a meeting room kind of thing where they talk about it, not like I'm on the mic just kind of saying it out loud kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like I feel like they
don't and they know.
really try to say that.
The drivers kind of know.
Yeah.
Also. And then like weekend to weekend, it might be because like Mercedes, I know Mercedes and Ferrari have done this before, where like 1 week, one car would go out in qualifying in front of the other to kind of tow them down one of the straights to get like a slipstream, so they got a little bit more speed down one of the straights.
Mm-hmm.
which kind of ruins that lead car's qualifying, but it really helps that second car's qualifying. And they would kind of trade off weekend to weekend which driver was which. I don't know if McLaren does that. I don't know if McLaren's an interesting situation because they're absolutely the best car.
Mhm.
They won the constructors championship last year. Lando just missed out on winning the drivers championship. Oscar was pretty much right there all season. He just kind of fell apart midway through and towards the end, like the pressure kind of got to him, sort of thing.
Mhm.
But Lando and Oscar are so evenly matched skill wise that it's hard to say for McLaren that Lando is my number one driver and Oscar is my number two driver. Because at most teams, that's kind of how it is. Like at Ferrari with Lewis coming in, Lewis is the number one driver.
Yeah.
If Lewis and Leclerc are racing each other, they're going to almost certainly give Lewis the go ahead to beat the car out in front.
Mm-hmm.
But with McLaren, they're so tight that it's almost just maximize the points for the team. If we're clear out in front, go ahead and race. But there doesn't seem to be like a primary driver there.
Okay. So I guess we'll end it on this last thing. But
Okay.
so we just watched the first race of the season, right? And it was in Australia.
Yep.
And it was rainy.
Mm-hmm.
And so before the race started, everyone's getting information, right?
Yeah, they do the formation lap.
They're going around getting those little tires heated up a little bit, right?
Yep.
That's what they do.
Yep.
And then we have our first spin out, right?
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay, someone just spun out, whatever, not too bad. And then he's not able to get out of the situation. And they say that his
rear wing broke.
Yeah, it broke. And they're like, yeah, he's out. And I was like, damn, that sucks,
Didn't even
right?
get to start the race.
And then I was just like, oh, that sucks. It just sucks for him because I was just like, he's probably just been in here before. And you're like, that sucks because he's from Australia.
He's from Australia.
And this is his first time.
It's his first race. He's a rookie.
And it was like, okay, you're telling me this stuff and I'm sad. And then he gets out of the car, right? And they have him in the back and he's just done.
He's just
heartbroken. He just has his helmet on still and he just has his like little visor thing up a little bit, but not a lot. And he just has his hand in front of his face and he's just walking. And I'm like, you're telling me all this. And I'm like, he's crying in there.
Yeah, he definitely was upset. Yeah.
And I feel
and they
so
kept showing him.
They had a camera
for like 10
walking
minutes.
right in front of him, going backwards, and as he's crying, and then another camera guy filming that, they would not let him go.
10 minutes, they kept cutting back to him to the point that Martin Brundle on the commentary was like, "I don't know if we need to keep showing this, guys."
Honestly, it was so sad. And then not Lewis Hamilton's dad, being such a good man, walks over to him, takes his little baseball cap off or whatever, takes his headphones off, and just hugs this man.
Just talks to him.
He's hugging him and he's talking to him. And later on, I see that he's just like, I felt so bad for him. I felt so bad for his team, felt so bad for his family. They worked so hard to get here,
You want me to add something on top of that? Isaac Hadjar was the driver, okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you know who his favorite driver is that he looked up to growing up?
It is not.
It's Lewis Hamilton. Yeah. So it was like, really meant a lot that Anthony Hamilton went over there and talked to him.
I'm sweating. I'm legit sweating. My hands are getting so clammy.
It really meant a lot to that poor kid.
It just hurt
he went and talked to him
so bad because, like he said, it's not just like a thing that you just get into.
Yeah.
It's like you made it to Formula One.
Yeah.
There's this many cars and that's it. And you're here. And it wasn't like he was being an ass and just like drove and fucking did something crazy. He literally was just going. Yeah. Shit spun out because it was wet. And you're done. And it was so
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
It hurt so bad to watch. And I just could not for days after that. I was just like, wow, I feel so bad for that man because he was crying in
He'll
there.
come back though.
Yeah, but I was
Oh,
sad.
yeah, I know.
I was so sad for him. And then the race happened, right?
And it was chaos. Yeah.
We lose 6 cars.
Yep. It's
6 cars
chaos.
spin out.
None of them
Fucking
crashed into each other.
no.
They just all lost it at some point.
Yes, but a good one was Piastri, right?
Yeah,
He had spun out.
Piastri and Norris hit the. It started raining late in the race, and they were on dry tires, and they hit the part of the track that it was raining at, and it was like a skating.
Yeah,
It's like a
and
skating
he just
rink.
like slid into the grass, and he didn't hit anything. And all these cars are flying past him, right?
Yep.
They're just going, and
just
he's
stuck
like
in the grass,
and he's like trying to hit on the gas, and his tires are just spinning.
Remember when he put it in reverse to get out?
Yes.
I saw a thing. Okay. One of the places that Oscar Piastri visited over the winter break was Jeremy Clarkson's farm. Want to guess what one of the fun things they did while he was there? He learned how to get a tractor out when it's stuck by reversing it.
Over the summer?
Yeah. Well, over the like winter,
Yeah.
like between seasons.
Wait, Jeremy
Clarkson from Top Gear.
Yeah.
When he went to his farm.
And it was just random. They were just doing stuff.
They're just hanging out, It's kind of going around.
That's so cool. Like. That's so cool.
And so here's Formula One driver Oscar Piastri applying. It was like Cars when Doc Hudson taught Lightning McQueen how to turn, Yeah. It's like that.
What? Yeah. That's so cool. Okay. Yeah.
I was saving it for the episode.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. That's so awesome. But he ended up getting out of that, and it was great. It was just wild to see all of that stuff happening. Yeah. And like there was some funny stuff.
That's why I love a wet race.
It was really interesting because the sky was getting really dark. They were like rain in 7 minutes. And then it's going. They're like rain in 4 minutes. Yep. And then it was like, we're spinning out, the rain's here. Yep, they're like, it's not too wet. The rain's not here. And they're like, it's here. It's raining.
It's hard, right? And that's what they were trying to explain. Because a couple times the drivers were like, well, should we go on intermediates if it's going to rain?
Yeah, and they're just like, wait.
And like the problem with that is if you go on intermediates and then it doesn't rain, now you're way slower than everybody else. Yeah. So you pretty much have to wait until it's actually raining.
And it's scary.
And it's crazy.
Yeah. And there was some funny shit that had happened with like Lewis Hamilton. Yep. The guy, what is he in there? Like the director?
Oh, the K1 thing?
Yeah. Yeah. He kept telling him, and what is the K1? Is that like a button or something?
Yeah, it's a button. It must be like a extra battery power or something. Kind of like they call it an overtake button. Okay. Where you get a little extra battery juice or maybe like a little extra engine power. Something changes in the car so you get a little extra power to try to pass somebody basically.
So he kept coming on and he's like, hey, you could use the K1 blah blah blah, and he's like, not yet, I'll know when I need to use it. And stop, right? And then he's just like, K1, use K1
over and over,
and
he did it like 6 times.
Yeah, I'll use it when I know. Like it's not time yet. I'm not gonna use it, let it go. And then it was like you said, like 5 minutes later, he's like, and you can use the K1 now. And he got pissed. And he's like, it's not time yet. Yeah. And it was so funny because you could just hear it in his voice, like, I'm annoyed. Yeah. He's like, I'll know when I have to do it.
Keep saying it. We need to stop.
And I don't remember. I think it was
like that, and then the Charles Leclerc radio.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
He's like, I have something wet, something in my car. My seat is completely wet.
Yeah, and the guy was like, it must be the water. And it was like, yeah. What did I piss myself? Like,
let's add that to the words of wisdom.
Yeah, that was so funny. Like the things that they were saying is just like
sometimes the radio messages are hilarious.
Yeah. I like how it's like kind of typed out like on the screen too, so that you can see what they're doing.
Yeah.
I also like when you're watching the race, like they'll show at times like the speed of like the car that's going, or like like you'll see different angles for like the cars driving by. But I
Yeah.
like it when they put the track on the screen and you could see each little dot
Yeah.
and the color.
Yeah.
It makes me think that it's like Mario Kart
Yeah.
because it looks like
Yeah.
that, and they're just like going around, and it's pretty interesting. But like there's still so many other things that I could talk about with this, but
Yeah.
like I'm gonna end the episode here. But I just needed to tell everybody, like I wanted everyone to sit down with us and listen to this because it's like it's so interesting. Because
Yeah.
I don't know if there's other people out there that are like, it's just fucking NASCAR, right?
Yeah.
It's a fancier
You got me on a
NASCAR or
couple
something.
rants too. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like it's so much better than that.
Yeah.
And it's also not giving, oh, everyone here is just like a drunk redneck kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's
All
Louis
kinds of different
Vuitton.
people.
It's giving
Yeah.
Rolex.
It's all kinds of rich people, all kinds of people from the country or the town where the race
Yeah,
is. Like it's
it's money. When
it's,
they
it's everybody.
what was it them that when they were like in Italy or something like that, or somewhere they were like in Milan. I don't know. They were racing on something, but like people were watching out of,
Monaco.
yeah,
Yeah.
people were watching outside of like their like
Yeah.
little apartment things and stuff. And I was like, that's money out there. Like
Yeah.
it was on water. It was crazy. Um but it's awesome. I feel like everyone should go give it a try, check out Formula 1 because like it's a lot different than what you would think.
Yeah.
Especially like somebody who like before I got with you, I don't give a fuck about cars. I just need to get to where I'm going kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, boring. I don't want to watch a car go in a circle. Like I don't care. And it's like once you know all these other facts,
So much more than that.
yeah, it's like wow, that's crazy.
It's like a puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And it almost makes me think of like wrestling in a way because like you're not just sitting there and it's like, okay, go, and everyone's just going and then you'll just like hear what they say. There's people where they're just like, oh, so and so is in the front place and they're doing this and blah blah blah. And like they're narrating on what's going on as it's happening, but they're also having little side conversations which have like some really funny
Yeah.
things in
Yeah.
them. And it's really entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
But we will be back later because we have more topics of other things we need to talk about,
Oh boy.
which I found that were pretty cool. So I definitely want to talk about NHRA.
Yep.
And just like some more stuff about cars because like talking to you about cars, I found out like some pretty cool shit and I'm
Yeah.
like, that's fucking cool. So thanks for hanging out with us and we will talk to you guys later. Bye. Aaron's waving. Bye.